you happy to have Donald Trump heading back to the White House?
Yes, I welcome the result, as I would whichever way it had gone. I think what is particularly positive is it appears to be relatively decisive. We will have a very peaceful transfer of power and a new president that will come into office on the 20th of January. And I think when we see democracy in action like that, we should always celebrate it.
When you see some of the comments that have been said about him in recent years, William Hague, of course, your former party leader, wrote a couple of days ago that he's dangerous for the United Kingdom and that the Republican Party under him are no longer natural bedfellows, no longer the natural sister party, were his words, of the Conservatives. Do you agree with that?
So I think that what matters here is that as our key ally, in terms of both world security, and there's a lot happening in the world at the moment, as we know, but also on the economy, it's really important that we forge a very close relationship with the new Trump administration. And so I think what you will find as an opposition, that we will be seeking to encourage the government into that positive engagement, because there's a lot going on. And if you look at the economy in particular, I think one of the problems that we've got now as a country is that we've just had this budget, massive spending, massive tax increases, resulting in anemic growth, in fact, lower growth across the forecast.
Maybe we'll come to that. But
back in spring.
No, but let's stick on the US if we can for a moment. I mean, William Hague, as I said, has criticised Trump, calling him dangerous to the UK earlier this week. Are you saying, with the early part of your response there, that you wanting to see our government have a good relationship with his government, that you can gloss over or ignore or forgive or just move on from similar negative comments from Labour front benches, government front benches, about Trump in the past as well? Is it in everyone's interest here?
David Lammy, for example, and the Prime Minister are clearly the government, and they are the ones who are the most important interface now with our allies in America and the new administration. And I do think a lot of how we progress with the United States is going to be about how strong that relationship is, how good the mood music is around that. And I think, therefore, Kemi Badenoch yesterday in Prime Minister's Questions at the Dispatch Box was quite right to press for a withdrawal of the kind of very strong comments that were made by David Lammy, particularly given that he is our Foreign Secretary and it is down to him, in large part, to foster that relationship with the new president.
But you disagree with William Hague when he says that Trump is dangerous for the UK?
So, no, I don't believe that Trump is dangerous for the UK. I do believe that it's very important that the UK builds a strong relationship with Donald Trump now as the president and the leader of the free world, and that relationship is furthered by positive mood music rather than perhaps some of the things that the Labour front bench has been saying.
His rhetoric, of course, has included tariffs, his favourite word, famously on the campaign trail. Yeah. Are you expecting a more protectionist United States? And is that coming at a terrible time for the United Kingdom, as, of course, we've recently just left our local trading bloc and countries further afield, big trading partners, don't particularly want to trade with us?
So, look, I am a strong believer in free trade. And, in fact, as a party, when we were in office, of course, we did a great deal in that area in terms of striking free trade deals around the world, around the Trans-Pacific
having taken us out of
partnership.
EU trading.
Well, but that freed us up to do deals with areas like the Trans-Pacific trade area and, for example, a free trade deal with Texas that has an economy larger than Italy. So there are all sorts of opportunities out there. But to your point about tariffs...
Which can't evade any federal tariff. I mean, a free trade deal with Texas is essentially a memorandum of understanding.
So the overarching point I'm making is free trade, I think, is really important. So let's come to tariffs. What tariffs, of course, will do is they will be a drag on world growth and potentially a drag on growth in the United Kingdom. And indeed, Goldman Sachs has recently downgraded their growth forecast for the UK based on that and other issues. So this brings me back to the budget and the economy, because we all know... But Wilf, this is important.
No, we know that... So do you expect Trump to impose tariffs on the UK?
Well, that remains to be seen. That remains to be seen. The most important thing that we do is have a positive engagement with the administration and make the arguments for that not to happen. But the best basis for doing that is clearly where you have a good relationship with the language around that being appropriate and not saying things that are likely to make that relationship more difficult. But I do think there's an important point around the budget here, which is that there are always going to be these external shocks and headwinds to the UK economy. They'll come along in different guises, and tariffs may end up being one of them. Let's see. But the most important thing then is, do we have a resilient and growing economy that, under whatever the world circumstances are, can thrive and increase people's living standards? And we saw nothing in this budget, I'm afraid, other than broken promises from a party which had said it wasn't going to be raising taxes left, right and centre during the general election, has done exactly that and put burdens on businesses and the productive part of the economy that we need to provide that growth. And if I may finally say, which is why the OBR are saying in their forecasts that there will be lower growth overall than they were forecasting back in the spring when we were in power. So that brittleness in the economy in the context of tariffs, I think, is something of concern.
We shall see if the OBR are right and if the tactics employed in this budget improve the GDP growth going forward or not. But of course, at the same time, as I discussed with one of your colleagues last week, there will be more spending that's taking place that would not have happened if the Conservatives had engineered this budget.
There's £400 billion worth of additional spending, about £40 billion. Spending's fine if it goes into the right areas of the economy for the right purpose. So, for example, a big problem that we have with the UK economy and have for many years now is relatively low productivity. The problem with this government is it's like all Labour governments in the past. They like to spray a lot of money around, but they're not asking for productivity gains as a consequence of that. So, for example, coming into office, one of the first things they did was they settled with the train drivers at 14%, junior doctors 22%, and yet there were no strings attached to any of those deals. It was billions of pounds worth of money going out the door with no productivity improvements to follow. And unless we get productivity up, particularly in areas like the health service and across the public sector, then we will struggle to raise living standards and we will struggle to have that stability in the economy that we need, exactly in the context that you've raised of potentially higher tariffs and other factors.
And as we've discussed in the past, productivity fell over the course of the last Parliament under the Conservatives. Just finally, were you surprised to be appointed Shadow Chancellor? And are you confident that Kemi Badenoch has united the party?
So, was I surprised? Well, I always thought there was a possibility of that. I didn't know that I was going to be appointed until the very last minute. So there was nothing had been said to me prior to that. But to your point about unity, yes, I think we've got off to an excellent start. Now, we had our first Shadow Cabinet meeting on Tuesday morning. And as I looked around that table, I saw people drawn from all wings of the party. I saw a shadow cabinet drawn together on the basis of a meritocracy, people that are going to do a fantastic job going forward, and the mood was very united. But more importantly still, I think, is actually what I picked up around the corridors of Westminster as I bumped into other colleagues who are not in the shadow cabinet but are now going into shadow ministerial positions, is that people feel very positive at the moment, that Kemi has reached out across the party and that unity really matters to her. And certainly that shadow cabinet feels very united to me.
Well, Shadow Chancellor, congratulations on the role. And thanks so much as ever for stopping by.
Thank you all.